what Jesus was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me."
Deep breath, everybody. I want to ask you a question. What's the most healing thing that anybody has ever done for you? You know, there are people here who know what it's like to be healed of a disease that could have killed them. So, treasure with great thanks the healing skill of doctors and nurses, research of scientists that goes into some of the amazing cures that we can enjoy today. But as well, healing comes through the outpouring of prayer. And there are many here who know about that. Or maybe you know what it's like to be forgiven by somebody you've hurt. The grace of that when you're given a second chance that you know you probably didn't deserve. Maybe somebody has stuck by you when everybody else walked away. Or maybe someone who walked away came back. Relationships can heal even years after they're broken if one person is willing to take the risk of reaching out again. Maybe you were desperate. You had a computer that wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, and you had a deadline to meet, and some good person came fixed it for you, rescued you, saved your life. That's happened to me in this church. Or someone found a way to lift from your shoulders the burden of something heavy that you couldn't carry by yourself anymore. Or took up your cause when you were too weary to fight anymore yourself. 8 or 9 years ago, I was in leadership in a denomination that was tearing itself to shreds over homosexuality. And I was in the firing line sometimes because I couldn't or just didn't have the patience to pretend to be neutral as people in my position were expected to be. One day, a package arrived at the office with my name on it. It was a prayer shawl that had been crocheted in one of the churches, a place I'd never been, by people I'd never met. They were praying not only for churches in conflict, but for me. That was healing. It was a kind of healing you could touch and wrap yourself in, a very beautiful gesture. Or maybe your story isn't about a person at all. We got news this week that Eric and Jenny lost their little dog, Truffle. Died suddenly this week. Truffle was the kind of dog who would sense if you're hurting and come and sit by you and take care of you. Pure love, pure giving, none of the embarrassment or pretense that we human beings get so stuck on. One thing that's pretty much certain about Jesus is that he healed people. The evidence for it is as good as it gets. Even across these 2,000 years, there are so many witnesses, so many stories so consistently told. Corroboration from external sources. And the thing that convinces me, his enemies never attempted to deny that healings were happening. They tried to discredit him by suggesting that he was in league with the devil. But they never challenged what was happening. Here's the scene through one writer's imagination. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asks the people he speaks to. And very often the answer is, "Heal me. Make me better from the diseases that this time and place in human history cannot cure. Leprosy, epilepsy, paralysis, schizophrenia. All the accidents of a biology which palpably is not safe, is not designed, is not secured from harm by the love that backs the universe." And Jesus does what he's asked to. He licks his fingers and makes a paste of mud and spit. He lays his hands on twitching stick limbs and the nubs where hands used to be, and the sides of heads, which are canisters of unbearable noise, are skittering electricity. And where he does so, without any fuss or visible fireworks, the patient shining that precedes all particular things is somehow enabled just this once, just at this particular moment, on a tiny scale, very locally, to seep through from the brightness beyond into the here and now, into what is, and to remake it as love would have it be. Impossibilities occur. Blind eyes suddenly see. Severed nerve cells reconnect. Legs straighten, infections recede, pain fades, horrified minds quieten. Up you get, says Jesus. Go, get up, live, be in motion, be about your business. Be the mended version of yourself. Perhaps this momentary suspension of the laws of the universe can happen because the maker of all things is now no longer outside them, impartially sustaining them, holding everything but touching nothing in particular. Now, instead, the maker is within as well, and he has hands that can reach. He has a local address in space and time from which to act. So, Christmas approaches. If it's just a historical remembrance, then none of this really matters. Jesus made life a lot better for a few hundred people a very long time ago. Bravo, huh? But love needs a local address in space and time from which to act today, too. We need healing. People around us need healing. Our environment needs healing. God knows our country needs healing. Long-standing injustices need healing. And what Christians have always claimed is that Christmas was not a once long ago event, but a recurring one. Christ is born into our world again. He is born in us. Whatever else that means, it must mean that the power for healing breaks in, because that's who Christ is. It is so much of what he did, so much of what he does. I would go so far as to say that whatever is waiting to be born in us this Christmas, if it is from him, will involve a commitment to healing. The form it takes can be as unique as who you are, with all the life experiences that have shaped and readied you. At some level, you may already know what it is, because the pain of the world calls to each of us in different ways. Listen to all of it, and it's simply overwhelming, but amongst all the voices will be one that connects with your compassion as though it had your name written on it. There will be something you can do, something you might feel you were born to do, and the Christ energy will flow through you. We've seen a lot of healing happen here through Sunday prayer concerns heard and shared, and cards and phone calls and food deliveries and rides to the doctor. People have told us many times how powerful it is. Some churches offer healing more explicitly through worship, through prayer and the laying on of hands for those who are ill or troubled who come to church. I don't know what you think about that. Is that a gift waiting to be born among us? If you think so, I am up for that conversation. But the healing ministry of Christ carries on in other ways too. Some of you saw it this morning in the faces of homeless people whose pain found comfort in your singing. Such a simple thing, such a simple, powerful, human, holy thing. Trinity United Church of Christ on the south side of Chicago heard the pain from people in their neighborhood being crushed by medical bills they couldn't pay. Homelessness was on the rise, and one of the main causes was bankruptcy people were experiencing due to medical debt. The church folk investigated the situation and discovered that medical debt is bought and sold on the financial markets, just like those subprime mortgages that caused the collapse back in 2008. So for pennies on the dollar, they could buy the debt and set people free. They decided they would. They raised $38,000 and they bought $5.3 million worth of medical debt owed by people across 3 zip codes right in their area. And then toward the end of October, they sent out letters to those families to say, your debt is forgiven, all gone, free. Our CCMI Social Outreach Committee heard that story last Sunday. We're meeting after church. They were inspired to send $500 of our 2019 outreach budget to that project. And then came word that if we could get our donation in on Giving Tuesday, there was a very amazing person somewhere else in the country who would double it. And so we did, and that person did. So I make that close to $140,000 worth of medical debt canceled by our gift. Imagine the healing that's already flowing from that. I mentioned the Pacific Northwest Conference newsletter that has a story about us. The cover story is about Shalom United Church of Christ in Richland. They, back a couple of years ago now, began to encounter the terror felt by immigrant families in their community. Their members had already been alarmed on the television and the news, the rhetoric about migrants, what was being said. They decided to see whether there was anything they could do, and started out by offering workshops for migrant families so that they would know their legal rights. Some of the church members volunteered with the 24/7 hotline and rapid response network, which spans the state. It's a telephone hotline for people in fear of deportation. They reached out to local law enforcement and built those relationships and offered community forums together where people could ask questions and basically become better educated on the issue. And then they put on an arts fair. That sounds like something we would do. Featuring work by migrant neighbors, featuring stories about everything that the migrants had contributed to their community. Now their little church action team has grown into a community coalition. Here's a photo of them. In October this year, they went out to the Yakima airport, standing by the fence where they could see people in handcuffs and shackles being boarded onto an airplane. And they shouted to them, "No están solas," you were not alone. Healing, huh? The UCC Church in Bellingham hosts a drop-in center for youth who are homeless or at risk. In Olympia, the church has partnered with Jewish neighbors, local synagogue that's giving sanctuary to an undocumented family. Fauntleroy Church in West Seattle took on the lease for a piece of land where the Second Chance encampment stands. That's a collection of 48 tiny houses, 30 of them built by members from Alki UCC. They bought the lease, and now that camp will not be cleared. Now it can continue to offer shelter to that community of the homeless. And there we are too. The article about us echoes what we said to each other, that putting solar panels on our roof wasn't going to help the budget, very much not for a long, long time. But it would say to the world that we wanted to be part of the solution to the climate crisis, a sign of healing, of possibility in the face of hopelessness and fear. The healing ministry of Christ is so broad, so beautiful, so full of options and possibilities. And you're just waiting to be born again in us, in any one of its hundreds, its thousands of different forms, many, many ministries, one Spirit. So here's what I'm asking. First, ponder a bit more what healing has meant to you as you have received it from other people. Say thanks for that. Remember your stories and learn from them. And then listen to the world's pain. The pain is endless, but don't worry. You are not God. It's not your job to carry all of it. Just listen for the one voice out of all those voices that can connect you with your deepest personal call to compassion. See if you can discover what compassion is calling you to do. Something is waiting to be born in you. something that the world will lack until you say yes. Heaven and earth meet when we say yes, and Christmas happens again. Amen. Our giving is joyful, as we have such a vivid reminder of what the money we give can do in this place and in the world. It's your offerings we receive now.